into it. Okay, so yes, covering GitHub and source tree stuff today. Not going to go super detailed into everything about source tree, but at least going to discuss on how we use it and how to properly kind of implement it in our team without causing too much fuck ups. So starting just on our GitHub, this is where we keep everything electrical and embedded as well. We have separate repos for most of the components. Dashboard has its own, the library, VCU hardware and firmware, BMS firmware and hardware, somewhere down there. We might still update the GitHub to break down our systems a little bit more, because of right now we have a lot of things in hardware, which makes it a little bit of a mess to deal with. So I think we're going to try to break down so we can have everything in its own repo. So BSBD is its own thing, BMS, dashboard, VCU, PDB, like all of these are already. So we're trying to break down more items into their own so we don't have a large repo. Now, what does it mean that we have a large repo in this hardware? Is if we click a drop down, we can see all of the branches that are associated with it. So the AIL, old BSBD, the high voltage boards, a bunch of the old PDB stuff, T-cell. We have all of these branches inside of the hardware, which just make it a much larger repo to actually navigate through, and when you're downloading it takes forever. So if we were to jump to hardware, we can see the difference between the hardware. These are the branches being tracked, so we can see a lot more complexity and jumping commits and everything going on compared to one of the specific libraries where we just have the single chain. We branched out once to do some work, and then it'll be pushed right back in. So this is kind of what we're aiming to do by pushing. We're wanting a little bit more of the independent repos so we can get a little bit cleaner workflows. So in GitHub, let's not look at the hardware. What would be a good one to look at? Maybe BMS. We can see that our master branch has the BMS working code. These are the files that are within the master, and we haven't touched for 2 years. But if we jump down to the Rev2 branch, which is where I've been working on most of my work, we have a different set of files. It stores your work in a separate branch, completely isolated from the master, so you can work on it, change as much as you want about the branch, about the project. So you can make new schematics, new PCBs, throw up new Word doc files and all of those kind of documents, and it won't ever affect the master, which is our preferred state, because since everything branches off of master, if master gets changed, and maybe in a bad way, maybe if you try to change master and your change had a negative impact on whether it be the code or the schematic design, if you run over master, then you're basically rooting it for the system. There are ways to go back through the history and pull up a good point in time where it wasn't destroyed, but it's better to avoid those whenever we can. But yeah, so if we jump into the Rev2 branch, we can see that we have all of these schematics, all the PCB projects, everything about making the BMS board, where our master has been tracking, because I think I pushed. So we can have it two completely different workflows. And this is how we can have multiple projects going on a related topic without directly impacting. So I can break off, have a Rev2 branch, someone else could break off and have a Rev2 branch, and we can work in parallel. Altium isn't the best for this, or GitHub isn't the best for Altium. So when we're working with embedded, working with text files, all of that, we can see, not this, what's something that I have pushed and also need to pull. When we have, I didn't want to do that. Doesn't matter, I'll come back to it. When we have text files going up, you can see in our file status, you'd be able to see everything that is within your document. So if we were looking at specifically the BMS PDF, if it was a text document, we'd be able to see line by line what everything's saying. So in code, that works perfectly. And it would compare it to the previous BMS PDF line by line text document. Obviously not PDF, but so we'd be able to look at what we're about to commit and what was previously on our GitHub. We can look at those line by line and actually read the differences. Whereas in Altium, it is gibberish. It's the random text symbols and everything, so it doesn't convert nicely into GitHub. So when we are making pushes with code, it's fine because you can read, you can actually compare, and you can see the difference before allowing it in. When you're pushing in Altium files, since we can't actually compare to what's there easily, we kind of just allow it to go up and push without properly knowing the differences. So there is limitations to GitHub and source tree with Altium files.
Just a quick question. Before we get too much further, can we just go over the terms, like what the difference is between a push and a commit and a stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. So the main things we use on source tree here: commit, pull, push, fetch, branch, and at the end of a project you merge. So committing is basically stating what your changes were. So if we were to look at if we look at our file history or our commit history, all of these are commits. So by me saying added more resistors, capacitors, power, that is a commit. So when we go to file status, we can see I have a couple files that are changed. So I would say I want to put them up, and I say I did something, and I commit that. So the commit is purely just sending up the files that you want to put, like actually get to GitHub, and giving it a meaningful line of text to say what you did. So added something, did this, did that, added schematics, whatever it may be. The commit is basically putting a line of text to that block of work that you want to move up. And then the next thing after a commit is pushing. So that is once you have now actually, you've staged the files that you want, so they're there, they're ready to be put on Git. You've made your commit saying you did something. You push it, because if you just commit it, it's still only on your computer. It hasn't officially been pushed into the GitHub. It is still only on your system. So you put, I don't want to do this because there's a difference. Yeah, so pushing it would be to actually, pushing it is when you actually send it to GitHub, and now it's there for anybody to pull off and look at or modify or do whatever with. Fetching is just if you've been on a repo for a while and there doesn't seem to be any changes, or you want to make sure that you have the most recent files to use or to be pulled or whatever, you fetch it, and that just basically refreshes. It grabs and makes sure that you have the most updated list of branches and commits on your system. And then pulling is when you want to take something from GitHub and bring it onto your computer. So I don't want to do that one. So we can see in this one branch, I have a single pull because Raphael branched off. He did something, and then he pushed it. So now this push, this new LDO is now on GitHub, but it's not on my computer. It's not in my set of files for this. So if I pull, I will bring that LDO now on into my files. And then branching is when you start a new project. If I were to jump in here and I wanted to do BSPD Rev 4, instead of just carrying on and working in the master branch or in the Rev 3 branch, I want to make sure that I'm taking the newest stuff and I'm going to go branch off and start playing with my own Rev 4 work, so I don't mess up his previous work. So in that case, I would branch, call it Rev 4, and it would create that little branch off where it's now independent from the previous work. So it's free to do with what you will without worrying that you're going to mess up any previous work. And then the final thing that we deal with, that we hardly deal with on the electrical side, I'm sure Embedded uses this a little more proper than we do, is merging. So that is now that, say, I have finished my Rev 4 branch, I'm done with it, we're going to quit. I want it to be back in master, so that is what everybody is using off of, just for their reference, they built off of Rev 4. I would merge, so it would send your branch that you broke off, and it will it'll merge it back into the master branch. So that's now, that is the updated point of what master is. To merge, we actually have to do merge requests. So you can't just say, okay, I'm done, I'm merging it to master because I think it's okay. Because then you'll override whatever master is and it can be problematic. So we do a merge request, which is you say, hey, I want to merge. And then basically the admins of our GitHub have to go through, which is Gabe, myself, and I don't know whoever else have been added onto that. We basically look at the schematics or the code or whatever it is. We review it, say, yeah, like these look like they will be functioning, or this is proper. It's not going to mess up anything. We'll allow it to come in and be the new master. Questions on any of the actions? No? All of these, they make enough sense?
Sorry, I had a question about poll.
Polling, yeah.
Yeah, so when you poll something, so it brings it onto your computer, but it's still that like task or whatever, it stays on the general like poll like GitHub thing. Like it doesn't remove it completely.
Yeah, so
Okay.
once it's on GitHub, it's not going away. It's just that polling is bringing it from GitHub onto your local computer, but it doesn't modify what's in GitHub.
Okay, so let's say if I pull something and then I want to make a change, but I don't want to mess anything up, so then I'd pull and then I would branch.
When you branch, I don't want to do this on something that I can mess up, so do I not have a blank? I have modifications and everything. Yeah, I'll show an example of branching in a little bit. I'll make I'll do a push pull, and then once I have a clean system, I'll branch so I don't mess anything up.
Sure.
Do we typically put each revision in a different branch?
Historically, no, we have not been. But that's because we are lazy.
You stuff goal going forward?
Yeah, and for a lot of things we do. For some things, like even my BMS stuff, I've been kind of lazy. But yeah, like we do branch off for different revisions. Yeah, like we have, like, we can see we branched off for our Rev 3 onto the BSPD, and I'm sure if I were to go back, I could see that we did it for other revisions as well. It is the proper way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just that sometimes we don't implement it properly. And then one of the things we can do is, if I go to, actually, yeah, just any other question.
Do you mean tagging that specific vision, or like starting a branch off of that commit? Because won't that just create stale branches?
Branching up. Yeah, you would branch off for revision, not for specific commit. Yeah, because if you're to do it off of each one, you're going to have a mess of branches. Yeah, so you basically want to branch off for each revision of a project, or yeah, or on like the embedded side, it'd be more basically project based. You would also want to be branching off for each.
And so just to clarify, like if we were assuming we weren't being lazy with this, you'd branch off of master for, say, Rev 1. Once you were done with that, you'd merge it back to master. And then once you wanted to do Rev 2, you would branch off of master again? Or would you branch off of Rev 1 to do Rev 2?
No, yeah, we would do it where we would branch off. Okay, then that's not a good one. Yeah, we would branch off. We'd have our master branch. We would create a new branch for Rev 1. We would finish Rev 1. We would merge it back into master. And then we basically delete the Rev 1 branch. And then if we wanted to make Rev 2 branches off of master again. Yeah, unless if we're wanting to do it revision by revision, it's best to go master, branch out, finish it, merge back to master, and then master, branch out, merge back to master. Because it keeps track of history, we can, once it's back in master, we could basically delete that branch so it's not taking up space, and ultimately it's just duplicate of master.
Okay. And if we, for whatever reason, ever wanted to go back to Rev 1, even if we've merged and deleted that branch, you can still access Rev 1 if you were on to Rev 2 or 3 by then?
Yeah, it'll all stay in master once it's pushed in. Yeah. Once it's merged into master, you can look through the history of master to go back commits through Rev 1.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so this is kind of what I was mentioning. This block that's all highlighted in red. So this is an output job file from Altium. Not really meaningful for us if we were to compare this with what's our current and what's previously there. This tells us nothing about how we added in one resistor or something. I mean, this is the output job, so it obviously is telling a different. It's telling something different than just saying added one resistor, but this is the kind of file that comes out of Altium, so it really doesn't help to try to compare. Now, if you do something and it's really not meaningful and you really don't need it, this happens a lot for me when I'm reviewing boards. So I'll go into the PDB. I'll mostly just look at it. Maybe add one thing to show how it should be done. I'll send a picture of it and then I'll quit off of it. I don't actually want to make the changes. Or Altium auto generates history files after being on for so long, which if you're doing nothing to it and then want to get off of it, it means nothing. So I have 2 files that mean nothing to me. I don't actually want it to push to GitHub. They don't mean anything for me to keep. So I don't actually want to hold on to these anymore. What we can do is discard these. So this is basically, and I mean, you can do it for more. It is possible that you can do it for true things. So I actually added in a new transistor into the schematic here. So if I were to discard this one, that would be completely lost. Or I mean, it's still on my end, but it's no longer going to be able to be thrown up to GitHub without going back into Altium and modifying. So you can technically get rid of full projects if from being pushed if you do it that way, which you really don't want to. But for the sake of my role, especially when you're just reviewing documents and then backing out of it, I didn't change anything. I don't care that these are here, and I don't want to push them because that's effort. I'll just discard. Okay. So now I have nothing to commit. There's nothing happened. There's nothing to do here. So I can't push Bowler. I can't push because there's nothing to, and there's just nothing happening on this branch to pull. And then we can see we have, so I'm on the dashboard repo right now. We have our master branch, which is where I think Koi was working for the, or which one is, this one is Koi? Yeah. This one was for the 2 side PCBs, and then the dashboard LED was for, or am I backwards? Oh yeah, no, sorry. Master Froz was working on the main one with the actual TIVA and the SD card, and then we broke off to have a branch for the 2 side PCBs that were specifically for all the LEDs on board. We can see there's this one, put the arrow down. That means there's 1 pole available. So we can see that we are currently at the highlighted blue. We're at this point of the branch, but we can see that something happened above us. So Koi made a push. So there's this commit of updated with minor traces. That's on GitHub, but it's not on my local computer. So I can switch out the branches, just double clicking. And we can see there's now 1 pull. So I want to get whatever fixes he just made, so I'll pull those. Making sure they're just, I'm pulling into dashboard LEDs. I don't want to accidentally try to pull it into master. I'm on dashboard LEDs, I want it to pull into dashboard LEDs. Don't bother with any of the options. So we'll pull it. It'll take its time. Now this is the most updated file that was from GitHub, and it's now on my computer. So I can now work with this. There becomes a problem when multiple things are happening on, not this one. When there's multiple things going on a single branch, or yeah, so like if you have commits, so you would, if you were to stage this commit, you would have some pushes and pulls at the same time. This is where we start to run into issues, especially with Altium files. That is, you basically override one or the other. Because you have, if you're just working off of one branch and you make the push to the branch when there's already a pull, so you haven't pulled it, the most recent thing isn't on your system, but you just make a push anyways, that newest push is going to be what's seen on the head of the branch. So it'll basically skip over completely whatever that other other commit was. So that means if I'm doing some work and I add one resistor and somebody else, and we say Steven is working on the same branch and he just added one capacitor and then he pushed that. So now I'm going to have one push ready. I'm going to have the commit of added one resistor. And he's already done the commit of added one capacitor and then pushed it. So that's already back on the main branch. So if I were to just push, the head of the branch would just be saying added one resistor. It would have no, it wouldn't actually have the knowledge of that capacitor because we just skipped right through it. So that becomes a problem when you have multiple people working on the same branch. You basically have to discard whatever you did or whatever they did, so that you don't have any conflict. So whenever we're working in pairs or we're working on a group on a single board, it's important that if you do your work, you quickly push it back before anybody else does their work so they can start off at a fresh point. Because it can get really, it can be really problematic if you were to start doing all of your boards, make all the schematics, make the PCB, and you finally decide to push in then, but somebody else has already been doing a bunch of work on that same branch, and they, and if you push all of your boards, your schematics, whatever, and then they come in and push after you without pulling, all of your work is gone. We'll be able to go back and see it in the history. We could forcibly go back to your commit, but the head of the branch basically says, no, whatever he did is what we're dealing with. So especially
There
with
not
Altium,
the merge conflicts.
if when you're yeah, but that's the thing with Altium files. You can't really conflict. I mean, you can't really resolve. You can't really resolve those problems like you can do in code. Because again, if same scenario, but we're running it in code, it will spit out your entire text block of code and their entire text block of code, and you can compare. You can basically, you'd have to manually merge them up yourself. So take line by line, say what you want, say what you don't, and then allow it to push. But we can't do that with Altium and the electrical files.
If your board is broken up into different schematic pages, is there any way of saying, or of having, say, one person work on one schematic page and having another person work on another one, and then at the same time, I mean, and then merge them that way?
Schematic pages are separate files, so probably. Right?
Separate files, but I wasn't sure if it changing something in a schematic page would change, I don't know, also change project properties in some other file that you weren't even aware of.
Depends
Or
on what
maybe
exactly you change, but also you can see what files have been changed
Yeah, so it
when you
may.
do the stage commit.
Yeah, so it may be okay, in the sense of, yeah, like you would be able to see that you've done, you know, the vsense to top the temp schematic document, and you would be able to just pull in someone else's work, and if they didn't touch these three at all, and they were working on the, you know, the Rev 3, the temp, and the serial schematic documents, it may be okay. I can't say I've tried it, and I don't really want to try it.
Yeah, I can't say so either.
Um,
Usually I'm just super careful with two people working on it.
Yeah, so the better option and the way that, I mean, commit should be going is whenever you do something, like, you commit frequently. So, like, we can see Gabe here on the VCU. He made, you know, 4 commits in a single day. Like, you do something, you commit it, you push it. You do something, you commit it, you push it. That way, if it is a multi-person project, you don't worry about having too much independent work on one side that they can't have. So the best way to go about team or group projects is basically have one person do it for, you know, a day or whatever, make their pushes, don't touch it. The next person will come in the next day, pull it, do their work, push it at the end of the day. Basically, so you have a high commit tracking rate, so you don't run into the issues of, oh no, I've done work on this branch, but so has somebody else. What else is there to? Yeah, I guess in source tree, you'll have whatever repos you've pulled. If you were to add more, again, local, this shows all of the different repos that I have locally on my computer. It's obviously not the entire batch of the Phantom repos, but if I wanted to clone, I already have the BMS. I don't know what I have. I don't have BMS firmware. I don't care about BMS firmware. Whatever. I don't think it matters. Clone with it. So you'll just copy whatever the link is off the repo. It's generally just keep the master, copy, throw it in, paste, and then just choose where to save it. One thing I do with my projects is I have a full separate file just for all of the Phantom GitHub work. So just have a full file for each of these repos that you're pulling off or projects that are going on. That's just how I deal with it, so it's easy to find and easy to keep all of the different repos I have on my system clean and together. But that doesn't matter. You just copy paste, you choose somewhere to save it, and you clone. It'll take its time, it'll download, and then you'll get this page of whatever one you're on. Okay, so this yeah, so we have this clean master branch of the dashboard. We're up to date. If we were to we did a fetch, we did a pull, we can see there's no indicators like how there is here. So we know we're up to date on the master branch. We're at the head of the master branch. So we know we have the cleanest, we have the most up to date everything from our GitHub. Now we could go through and branch and say, create a new branch on this. So I wanted dashboard Raspberry. So this would be, I'm going to create a new branch off of the master, so our most recent, whatever the master was, and I'm going to call it Raspberry because whatever the dashboard I'm now designing is going to be with dealing with the Raspberry Pi. Make it nice and simple, or I could have called it, dashboard Rev 2, whatever you actually want to call it. Check out new branch, and then you'd create branch. And doing that is how you would be able to break off. So you basically want to do that for every new project you start. You would go to the master branch, make sure you're at the newest file, and then just create branch, call it, Rev 2, Rev 3, whatever meaningful actual project name you have, and then check out, and it would create a new little, you would see it create a new little branch, just like this, where this would be your new branch, and you'd be able to track all of your commits and all of your work independently of master. Questions on any of this? Source tree in the GitHub making a little more sense to some of you?
Very much so. Yeah. Are we supposed to create our own repos for our boards, or is that something the leads have to do?
I think that's something the leads would have to do. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if anybody can make a repo. I probably think you could. Double check schematics. Yeah, I think you would be able to create your own repo. I mean, you can try it, and if it gives you some error, that just means one of the admins or the leads have to make one for you. But I think anybody should be able to make their own repo.
Okay, and that's kind of the way we're going now. Is sort of each board has its own repo instead of having them all in hardware.
Yeah, because yeah, it'll make it cleaner project to project. Like you can see, it's BSBD is just whatever it was doing. It branched off once to do whatever. PDB, again, it's all just one continual string, and then you can see there was work way back. But when you look at hardware, it's the thermistors in here, the AIL, the T cell, the high voltage board right now, the old pre-charge board. All of these are in here. So trying to work with merging all of these into master can become hectic. So yeah, if we can keep each board basically in its own repo, it would probably clean it up. We're still working on how we want to manage that, though.
Okay.
Questions on anything else? I think I hit everything that we basically use in the sense of source stream GitHub. Elena, this makes sense? You know how to use it all now?
Sure. I think so. Hopefully.
Is there anything just right off the bat like you're uncertain with?
Not really, no. Just like a quick question. Because I was looking at the like online GitHub version thing. Are you using like some sort of a desktop app, or what are you using for this thing? Because it doesn't look like mine.
For GitHub?
Yeah.
I'm just using the web browser.
Okay, but what's that like blue thing?
Oh, the source tree?
Sure.
See that? sourcetreeapp.com. This is the GitHub. So you can just easy download for free, have that. And that's how you get, that's how you actually get our source tree.
Oh, okay.
And then, yeah, so when you first download it, you'll have nothing. So you just right off the bat, clone, throw in all of those URLs from our GitHub, put it somewhere, clone it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Jay, everything make sense?
Yep. Makes sense.
Raphael?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I know we've got you guys to do a little bit. And Raphael, I mean, we walked you through when you were running in this LDO, so should have a hold of it. But yeah, it's really good practice to commit often. So whenever you're doing work, end of day, you go push it. I was terrible for that when I started the BMS. It would be, where's some of mine? Yeah, let's see. I didn't know how to. I made a push in December, and then I didn't make another commit until May. No, November. Yeah. So for several months, the only work that all of the work about the BMS was purely just on my computer. 7 new schematics and starting on a PCB, being only on my computer, nobody else has access to it, which was terrible, because then if I were just to quit or my computer just exploded, we lose all of that work. So it really is just best practice to commit often. So you do a little bit of work, basically anything meaningful, or just generally at the end of day, you go make a new commit, push it, so we don't potentially accidentally lose any existing work. All good?
Sounds good.
Okay, then that will do it for this one.